why has there suddenly been this hype around big data? Obviously it is technology focused, which I agree, I hate it being purely technology focused. I do want results.
I don't think it suddenly happened either, and I think we have simply had an exponential growth in the amount of information that's been made available, both within companies and through social media externally. So I don't think this is a sudden hype, it's just one that's grown on us over the last few years because of the simple explosion of the amount of information that's available. And I think we heard from a couple of examples today of some fabulous advantages people are gaining from looking at their business that way. So I think it's become more exciting because there's just a lot more data and people got very excited about that. I think it's not about the technology, and I think in answer to your question about who should be doing this, I come back to the fact that if your primary motivation in a business, and as a relatively small business, you want to either gain more customers, sell more to those customers, then the exciting thing about big data is if you ask yourself the question and say, how do I get more customers? There is a wealth of available information, as we were hearing about, on your customers' behaviours, their profiles, that is available to you, that you can use now to get a better profile of customers and target them more effectively. And that is where I would start.
Yes, I agree in broad principle to that, but I think for most people would be of a certain size company. What size do you have to be to even, let's say, how many people do you have to be before you should even attempt to take this on board? But every company should be metrics driven. Everyone I think accepts that. So do you want to take the kind of the pattern up there?
My view on that would be one.
Yep.
If you're one person, if you're a one-man band, you should have, I think today you do have the ability, I'm sure Salesforce would support this point of view, to take advantage of the big data to influence your business as much as a company with 100,000 people. Most of this stuff is in the cloud. Most services, particularly around marketing, you can subscribe to as a cloud-based service, and probably will cost you, a proportionate amount, i.e. not much if you're a small business. And we've seen small businesses take advantage of cloud-based big data as much as the biggest businesses can. I think it's huge.
Have you got any particular examples?
I think retail.
Interesting in the smaller company, because I think it's a real challenge to say one person, because to me a company with one person doesn't have a big data problem. Because I think this comes back to what you define as big data.
Big data opportunity.
Well, yeah, but we're fishing in a pond where you're the smallest retailer, for example. You're competing with some really big guys out there, and you want to be able to take advantage of. You talk about demographic analysis as much as they are to figure out how to target your scarce marketing budget. You can do that. You can get a service that will provide you with that information as much as the big company can. It's a level playing field now because of the provision of big data through cloud services.
Okay. Libby, do you have anything you want to add?
In terms of size of company, a lot of we work with some of the largest e-retailers, and I can't name names, and they are spending globally in every single country. And we also are working with one-man, two-man companies that are building e-commerce applications, or whether they be search models or selling particular products or aggregating product or aggregating content or ticketing, and they are one-man bands, and they are now competing with some of our biggest clients, e-retailers, within specific niche sectors because they are able to pinpoint and target the right customers that they're trying to hit. And I think that it doesn't matter how big you are or what your marketing budget is, as long as you know what you're trying to do and who and how to find those specific people, which is where the big data comes in massively useful for us on a day-to-day basis, and when mobile becomes increasingly cost-effective for these small companies, anyone should be using it. And we're working with clients and budgets from 1,000 to 3 million a month. So, I don't think there is a size. It comes down to what you need to do.
I'm not sure I understand. Are you saying it's not a technology problem?
I didn't say it wasn't a technology problem.
Because I work with my company's called Rexus, and we use big data and machine learning to actually solve problems. And I think that is very much stuff that a one-man band or even a small company can't do. It's a multidisciplinary approach just cleaning data could take you days, you know.
It is.
There's so much stuff
I think you can define this between, are you a company that's taking advantage of a product that is built on the concept of big data, or are you implementing big data internally? So I think that's where the split between, you can't frankly run yourself a Hadoop cluster and collect lots of customer data and integrate that together if you're a one-man band. If you are 1,000 people, then you're going to probably want some kind of custom solution and take advantage of all those new technologies. So I guess that's where you're aiming at.
It was me, so I'm the guilty party in saying I didn't think it was about tech. It's quite hard being in these low seats, by the way. I'm not saying that technology is irrelevant. That would be silly. I'm just saying I don't think that is the big barrier in the way of people attaining the kind of benefits we've heard about today so far. I think there are ways of, one-man bands, I think there are ways of accessing other people's technology, cloud-based technology. I think you can rent some of this technology, frankly. And so I just don't see the technology being the thing that's in the way of benefit.
I think the one takeaway for, so I'll come back to it in a sec. One takeaway for is for you to go and read Tim O'Reilly's definition of what big data is, because there are lots of definitions. Tim, I think, has got a very broad approach to it. One of the key points I've always actually, because big data doesn't mean that it is terabytes of data. A lot of people do just instantly say it's terabytes of data. I've always actually thought it's more to do with the combination of data sets, and because many of the technologies involved are moving away from old style databases where if you have what they used to call RDBM, which is a relational database, you can't merge relational databases together very easily, and therefore you can't derive insights because you've got two siloed data sets and you can't build those insights. So that's, if you go down to the technology level, that's what a lot of the hype comes from, is because of those two things. Neil, can I go back to Adobe? Who drives the overall strategy with Adobe of adoption?
Adoption of big data for marketing?
Just everything. How is it being kind of driven down out into the organisation?
Well, it's interesting. So it's a combination of the CIO, a lady called Jerry Martin Flickinger, and the CMO, another lady called Anne Lewis, who both had a vision of instrumenting our business, as I talked about. I've talked about our transformation, and a very strong relationship and a very business-oriented CIO who was very keen to provide that kind of instrumentation, and then a ton of people in the across the business buying into it. So understanding, okay, we're going to make this part of our job. People who maybe were wholly creative in their jobs will say, okay, I'm going to make data-driven be part of how I think, and how I plan, and how I action my marketing. So kind of culture change across the business, but definitely led from the top.
Okay, come back to your question.
Thank you. Question specifically, to all three, but particularly to the end users, if you like, of data. Libby, you have a team of, or your company has a team of 60. Adobe, I'm sure you have a similar size of people analyzing data. We're talking about a lot of basic real-time data on the mobile side. What's the lead time to take a data set to actually generate these insights, the analytics, the predictions, the dashboards, the reports? How many days, hours do you talk about in your experience?
I'll start. It's an interesting one for us because a lot of what we're doing is optimizing campaigns on the fly based on the data. So we end up using, so we've got 60 people that are actually getting the data back from wherever we're placing ads out in the world on particular devices or campaigns. But we actually use specific tools that actually sit in between the campaigns we're serving and the people that sit at these desks and optimize the data, that actually ping back as soon as someone reads an ad, or as soon as someone views an ad, or as soon as someone makes a purchase because of an ad. They ping back in real time, and we do a certain amount of optimizing on the fly based on those live pingbacks, and that's immediate. So that makes us be able to easily turn off campaigns that are working, turn off, work immediately, change A/B testing based on what's working. That's all the immediate stuff. Then the other guys actually sit there and they're checking data just depending on the campaign every 2 to 3 hours, and that's sort of how long it actually takes. The problem that we have, not the problem we have, but where the problem lies is that these 60 people that we have actually working with this data that's coming back every 2 to 3 hours, that's not the live data, is turning that into meaningful insights. So on a daily basis, we then have to overlay all of this information and all these decisions that are being made based on campaigns and real data with a team that we call our central strategy unit. And these guys are the storytellers, they're the meaningful guys. So they come in depending on the type of campaign on a daily basis, and we'll do an analysis to make decisions. On other campaigns on a weekly basis to do analysis and make real-time data, make real-time decisions. So it really does depend on the campaign. So for us, there's all of these different levels.
What are their backgrounds? Because I think one subject that comes a lot up is data scientists.
Yeah.
So how, what are those people like in your organisation, and how, you've obviously got a very specialist set of people internally.
Yeah.
How does it, again, so I'd love to know how you recruited those people,
Yep.
what were their backgrounds,
Yep.
And then what should a company look for if they want someone, how do you find your data scientist?
There is a very big difference between the optimizers, the day-to-day optimizers, and our data our strategists. And the optimizers, we have trained every single one of them up from the ground up as graduates. And all we look for in that space is, we start at a very junior level, and we just need the smartest people, that are numbers people, that are figures people, they've done maths, they've done, they've done a science degree. They're numbers and they're figures people, and they're not scared to sit in front of a computer and actually work the data once they know how to do it. And the other people are completely different. Our strategy team are the marketing people, but they're marketing insights, and they're very senior. In terms of what we pay these different people, there's a vast difference between them, because the actual day-to-day guys, they're working to a formula. They're not working to insights. So I think a lot of our clients will have people that work at that day-to-day level and at that quite junior level, and then in their organisation it's often the CEO that works at that top-level insight level, or or chief marketing officer, or whoever it might be.
Yeah.
So we have very different levels.
This high level people, what's their background beyond marketing?
Their background, they're all quite different actually. We've got one guy that had a background in PhD in neurophysics, and had a massive interest in just how the mind works. We've got guys that have just come up through different research organisations, so they've worked in the likes of Nielsen or those types of organisations. A lot, because we're media, a lot of some of our guys might have come up through sort of planning, buying, strategy, all different backgrounds.
Essentially extracting true stories from.
It's extracting the true stories and the clever understandings, and that's also then how we sell into our clients, and then they then sell on to their CEO in terms of getting more budget and making decisions, because it's true, real stories.
We've got a very similar approach actually to what Libby described, and maybe the difference is the senior folks that we have tend to be more industry experts, tend to be more, if you're looking at retail data and we're trying to benchmark 1,000 companies globally and their performance, how their business is doing as a retailer, the senior folks, the strategic guys, tend to have got 10 or 20 years of retail background and understand that market and be able to give very deep insight very quickly into trends that they see. But other than that, very similar profile to your business.
I actually see sort of three types of skill being developed in small businesses, which links to this in the clients that I see, the smaller clients. One is preparing themselves for the more junior people, that this will become a general skill. The ability to manipulate and understand vast quantities of data is going to become almost a core skill, just as using Excel. So I think that's increasingly happening across university campuses and actually schools, and I think that's emerging. But it's emerging, so I'm going to get you the stuff now. I think the second is the specialist skills, and I think those are the data scientists that we've talked about, the people who really know how to put that data together, and then the analytic modelers, the people who, and those are coming as much from a mathematical, statistical background as actually from engineering. I'm seeing a lot of backgrounds in engineering moving into that. And then finally, I guess you've called what you would call your industry experts or your senior people, which are your interpreters. I think we just have an increasing, the expertise has to come through at that senior level, and people who have to become more familiar with being able to look at this quantity of information and take the decisions that I think we've talked about. Those are the three categories that people need to hire.
Interestingly, one of our data scientists used to be an architect. There's a few good videos online with Hilary Mason, who talks a lot on, because she's a data scientist. She talks a lot about the backgrounds, and it is very varied, because it tends to be people who've got an inquiring mind rather than necessarily a particular, it helps to have a mathematics background. But I think what I'd be interested in is how are you advising your customers to actually look into this data? There seems to be a propensity to produce lots of pretty graphs. What do you advise them to actually? How do you go about finding actions out of data?
So if I give an example that's happening right now with a retailer. I won't discuss names for obvious reasons, but a relatively small retailer. And what they're looking at is how can they compete in a different way with the bigger retailers, frankly. That's actually where they're looking at it. And what they've decided is they've decided to start small. They've picked a particular area of the country, a particular demographic of people, so there's a physical aspect to this retail, not just online. And they've said they're defining 3 hypotheses, so 3 questions, business questions. I think my customers are likely to buy more of this product if they're aged between this and this. I think my customers are more likely to buy this product between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Questions like that. And then what we're working with them is to say, given those questions, what type of data do you need to get hold of? How much do you have in your business? How much do you have that's available socially? How much in the cloud? How much can you buy from other people? They're looking at demographics, free data. And that's quite absurd. That's
just to interrupt, do you think many people know this data to go out and buy?
So do I think that many people know?
No, yeah.
I don't think there's many people who know there's data that's out there.
Yes. Yeah, so
I think one of the bigger challenges in this is actually being clear on what data you can actually get hold of. And some of that, though, rather than sitting in a dark room and coming up with all these ideas, it's a little bit of experimentation, to be honest. So I don't think this is a process of you answer the question, you do this all the answers, and suddenly magically out comes the answer. I think and I think we've heard today, you ask some questions, you get some data, you see some answers, you evaluate further. So there's that analysis piece. And then out of the back comes a series of insights. Your reference to pretty little graphs or something, I do think the visualization of the answer is incredibly important. And I don't think that means it has to be incredibly complicated. I just mean whatever visual you're showing has to be appealing to your audience. In this particular case, a very small board of a relatively small retailer that wanted to have something that was in its face obvious about what it was looking at. And the use of maps in that particular case was incredibly important. So visualizing something on a map with location was important. It wasn't complicated, very impactful. And they took some decisions. And then what they did, having taken those decisions, they looked at what the outcome was of those decisions compared to if they hadn't made the decisions, and then they went round that loop again. That's how we did it.
Okay.
They're halfway through.
I was going to just ask one sort of thorny question that always comes up with big data is privacy. I think I'll let Libby start, because obviously in mobile it's probably the most sensitive. What is the take you have to on? There is huge amounts of data out there, especially, and you've focused a lot on individual users, and I think everyone recognises that the more data you can gather around individual users, the more targeting, the more, everything can get better. But obviously, Facebook is a point in case, everyone is fearful of how much data Facebook is collecting on all of us, and every time they do anything to do with marketing, there's always a huge, PR thing about it. What should where's the kind of line that people should take when dealing with this kind of data?
That's a difficult question. I think that data privacy, the majority of what we're doing and where the most valuable data our clients are using is their own data, and how they actually get that from their customers is sometimes where the problem comes in. But what we're increasingly seeing with trends and with surveys is that customers aren't scared. And I think it was you mentioned this earlier. Customers aren't as scared to give their data away anymore. It's the way that you then use it. Customers actually want to give their data away because they want more personalised experiences back. We don't have a lot of problems with privacy around data because it is all we are targeting people specifically through through the most minute tools with mobile. But it's because it's the organisation's data of their customers that we're working with. So privacy doesn't come up massively in terms of what we're doing.
You want to add to
So, well, similar lines really. I think people are probably smarter than we probably give them credit for, and they recognise that the more information they volunteer, the more appropriately you can address them, and the more value they can get out of the interaction they're having with you. And we've definitely seen that recognition grow in the last 2 or 3 years in all sorts of channels. So I think obviously it is also the law now, so there's some pretty specific behaviours that you've got to deliver, pretty specific ways you've got to collect information and show why you're collecting, what you're collecting and why. And I think there's been a lot of activity around that for the last year. Most organisations are comfortable with that. But the level of transparency, I think it's been healthy because the level of transparency about what data we're collecting has gone up. And people are infinitely more comfortable with that now.
There's a couple of hands.
I do think we need to separate the two things, though, because I agree with this point. Privacy, confidentiality, there's laws. You have to comply with it. It's very straightforward. It's very serious. I don't think the challenge is around that. There will be challenges around that. I don't think the new challenge of big data is around privacy, confidentiality, controversy, or losing the data. That's all very clear. You can't. You have to be careful. I think the issue is customers becoming more astute at and interested in how you're using their data, even if you are complying with all legislation and regulation around privacy, confidentiality and all that stuff, and assuming you never lose their data. I think customers are becoming, and we found it with our customers, much more savvy around how and why their data is being used and what for. And there are some businesses that are now offering almost an option, a full option to customers to say, here are all the ways we might be using your data. What do you like and what do you not? I think it's different.
Yeah, in terms of obviously this whole big data driving a lot more information down to boardrooms, and just wondering in terms of the customers that you advise, how do you prevent them from getting stuck in sort of a situation that's akin to analysis paralysis? And with all that information, new information coming in at that daily, hourly basis, how do you advise them to still keep sound decision making coming in this world of ever-growing data and information?
So let me give you an example of where they haven't. I think many of my customers, hopefully not the ones I advise, but I think there's a big risk of analysis paralysis. And actually I think there's a big risk of having so much data you don't know what to do with it, actually. And I think asking the right questions to begin with is critical. I think that's very helpful in avoiding you getting lost. But I have an example of a business where they've done some analysis, they've done it extremely well, and they've done some, it was outside of this country, and they've done some analysis to basically show exactly what they were buying and selling and the profits and whatever of three of their retail outlets. And they decided that one retail outlet was hugely successful, and the other 3 regional outlets, relatively close, were not that successful. Fantastic data, footfall analysis. They decided they were going to close down the 3 others and leave one. They'd forgotten to actually look at the fact that that one was inside a terminal building of an airport. And I think that it was a great example of the fact that they got so excited by all this big data and analytics, they failed to ask some very basic questions up front to make sure it was targeted. Asking the right questions up front, making sure it's a targeted analysis, and not forgetting that we're still trying to make commercial judgments around our business is the way that you need to get people on the right road.
One last quick question before we finish.
That point, Richard, comes back to what I was going to ask earlier when you talk about statistics and analytics, and you did actually manage to mention the statistics word. The confidence of the analytics you undertake is something that gets lost in bar charts and graphs and can easily be picked up on either to make rapid decisions that result in closing the 3 outlets, or in analysis paralysis because you don't have the confidence in your analysts. I just wonder what tensions you find across your clients around dealing with confidence intervals and t-tests, all the other stuff that goes with statistics and goes with actually what's underpinning the results of the analysis that are coming out.
Who would like to?
Would you like me to? I'll start. So a couple of things, and I deal with small organisations and big organisations. And with large organisations, I'll come to it. So the first thing I think that's quite important is businesses are running their business and making their decisions on this data now, whether they're choosing to put it into better analysis or not. And they're making a lot of gut feel or experience-based decisions right now. It is intriguing then to find that when you put a more disciplined and structured approach to analysing that data, somehow a whole new level of mistrust comes up. So I think one of the things that's important to get people over is that this isn't some kind of Star Wars, sort of Star Trek futuristic time, fearful world where there'll be no longer the need for the management decision and suddenly everything will be predicted by machine. And so I think culturally there's a lot of work that needs to go on to help people to understand why this is better. And I find it in the big organisations, it's that cultural objection to being roboticised that gets in the way. In smaller organisations, I find a lot less risk of that. I find a lot more desire to experiment, which I think is critical to avoiding getting into that statistical nonsense. Experiment, really understand what works, try it small, so that you really get a feel for what works and what don't, the outcomes are positive or negative. And I think that small and iterative approach to answering those type of questions is what I see small businesses becoming better at compared to their large competitors. So,
I think we're done. Great, thank you very much. No problem. Nick, thank you very much. Thank you to our panel.